Well, depending on the state. So some are relatively welcoming for non-Arctic states to participate in discussion, like Norway. Russia, on the other side, is really concerned about non-Arctic states trying to become involved. They consider that the 5 or the 8 Arctic states are enough and they should be the only one discussing real Arctic issues. And of course, for Russia, the main issue is Chinese involvement, growing involvement in the Arctic. Well, it's more, I think the Russian position on Chinese involvement in the Arctic is not specifically linked to the Arctic. It's mostly linked on the Russia-China bilateral relation globally. So this feeling that for Russia, suddenly the rise of power of China is changing its own strategic balance with Chinese involvement in the Far East, economically, demographically, the China-Russia cooperation on Central Asia, which is good, but which could deteriorate potentially. So it's more like the feeling that suddenly there is a third theater opening for their own relation, which is the Arctic. And for Russia, it's not something that it's very welcoming. Even if they need Chinese investment, of course, in energy, they are not very interested in having Chinese strategic interest to be taken into consideration. Yeah, well, I think, for example, a US-China partnership in the Arctic will be very negatively received by Russia, because that would kind of reinforce this idea that there is kind of conspiracy against Russia's interest in the region. In terms of Russia-US cooperation, I think there are relatively a lot of fields, everything related to polar knowledge is very important, both for Russia and the US, because that's really two knowledge powers in the region. People-to-people exchanges could be also really developed. They were relatively developed in the 90s and they stopped, but that's something that could be really revived and which is depoliticized, more or less. And everything related to sustainability, climate change, environment is something where Russia is relatively open to be invited to participate in partnerships related on these issues. So I think that's space for cooperation. Well, Norway is very well positioned because it's a key country. It's the one which has the most kind of holistic approach of everything related to the Arctic. It has very good relation with Russia, and it's a NATO member, and therefore very good relation with Canada, US, and Europe. So I think Norway could be one of the leaders, which is really kind of consensual, recognized by all. But I think regional cooperation could be really framed through regional institutions, and that's where all the Arctic states agree, that it should be a kind of institutional, multilateral framework that would be pushing. And of course, a lot of things are dependent of Russia, because if Russia wants to play the cooperative pattern, then everybody will follow. If Russia retracts to that, then things will become more complicated.